Some of you may know that CBD properties often struggle to make a profit, yet for investors, it is often still a place that first comes to mind. And today we're going to be reviewing the latest development near the CBD, which is One Marina Gardens, and really deep diving into why this happens, as well as what you must consider if you're thinking about going for this development. So as usual, I'll go through the overview followed by the various bedroom types, which I'll include the timestamp too, so you can easily hop on over there. So let's first look at the location. So just from my background, you can already see this will be located next to Gardens by the Bay. So looking at the sky view, we will actually be over here, so closer to the meadow side of Gardens by the Bay. And this is going to be part of a new township, which of course, just from your location, you're going to get some pretty nice views. So here's a sketch from URA on what this might look like in the future. We are the first development to come up in this new township, where you're going to have condos here, as well as a lot of green spaces. We're going to have more eateries, childcare. Really, the goal for the government is to make this a more livable area instead of just business, very much like central CBD you would have. So a little sketch of what it might look like. So do note from the plot here, you can really see we are the first, but there are several red plots next to us, which will likely be residential, as well as a white plot here. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about going for the views, which later we'll talk about as well. So this is by Kingsford, which we know from recent launches like Trump Park and previously Normanton Park. Now this is no small development because it's going to be 937 units made up of two blocks of 30 to 44 stories. Now in terms of key collection, estimated you can get it earliest about 2029. Here are some sketches of what it will look like downstairs. You can see you have some shops. Now the other thing to note about this development is it will be the only one in the area that is directly linked to the MRT. So of course this is going to be a bonus when it comes to rentability as well. So we can see from this chart over here, so this is the shorter block, and then this will be the 44-story higher one, which is closer to the Gardens by the Bay side. So downstairs here, you'll have your commercial shop, which is your childcare, your eateries, and then on this side, you notice that between each block, you actually have facilities between the floors. So it'll be quite nice where you have your gym, your pool, and you can actually face the gardens and exercise. So looking at the unit mix, we have 1 bedroom all the way to 4 bedroom, which of course, the biggest unit mix will be 70% smaller units, 1 to 2 bedrooms, and then 3 bedrooms to 4 bedroom will be about 29%. So you can very clearly see the intention of the developer is to target more investor-like buyers. So diving into the site plan, over here you'll have the higher block, which is 44 stories, followed by the 30th story one here, which has the commercial shop downstairs. And I say overall, actually the site plan is quite impressive to me. You have proper landscaping as well as a full swimming pool. This feels like a full facility condo, which is quite rare in the CBD. You really feel like you have space and openness without it being too cluttered. Probably the only thing you don't have is a tennis court here. So let's talk about views, because definitely a lot of different premiums and strategy from the developer will be placed on the views. So what views do we have in comparison? So on this side is Gardens by the Bay, which means that for this block over here, as well as this one, and maybe those on the side over here, you might get some view of gardens, which means that there might be a premium on the pricing. Now over on this side, you'll be able to have the sea view as well. However, do note, like we saw earlier, there is a white side over here. So if something builds there, it might potentially block your view. Now, going on to this side, you will be facing the opposite plot, which is currently empty, so you'll be able to have a nice view. But if they do launch the other plot for sale and a development builds, your view might be potentially blocked there as well. So just looking at what the views look like at all 4 corners. So gardens on this side, you can see the sea view on this side, and then for here, you still have the bay view while there is no development up yet, and then on the other side, the sea view over here. So all these views are taking into consideration what it might look like from the roof level. Let's look at the starting prices. So for 1 bedroom, it's going to be 1.16, 2 bedroom 1.8, 3 bedroom 2.45, and then 4 bedroom 4.45. So these prices have been released by the developer, and looking at this, you can see the starting PSF will be about 2,700 to 2,800. Now, how does this fare for this area in the Marina zone? So looking at the average PSF for D1 area, it's actually 2,929, and the highest transacted is 3,752, which means that if we can get something below that, it might be quite safe for exit, but of course you want to look at the individual bedroom types as well. Diving into the one bedrooms, now we're going to quickly go through the layouts because again, the number one thing we want to look at for this area is the numbers. Now for 431 square feet, you have a good sized bedroom that can fit up to a queen size bed, possibly even a king. You have an open concept kitchen, and for the same size layouts, you'll see that they are very similar, just that some are mirror images and slight differences in how the kitchen is placed. And then for 420 square feet, the smaller one here, you have a shorter walkway, followed by the largest, which is 452 square feet, where you have the kitchen over here, split from the washer, which is on this side. And this, to me, actually makes the kitchen, or rather the whole place, feel even smaller. So between the two, I actually prefer 431. And then for the remaining few, you'll see they are very similar to the first few we went through. Number one thing to consider for one bedrooms in the CBD is how rentable it is, in order to understand how easy you can exit from here in the future. But for the marina area, we don't have a lot of comparison because most of the developments are older or the layout is much bigger. So how do we know how much we can rent One Marina Gardens for? Now to understand that, let's look at a nearby area in the CBD, which is Tanjong Pagar, where we see a difference in the sizes of layout. And we're going to be using 4 developments to understand this, which is the Cliff, Icon, as well as Sky Suite at Anson and Altes. Now what I want you to take note of here is the per square foot rental rather than the quantum, because there are some major differences in sizes between these developments. Now for Icon, you can see that in general we have about 500 to 700 square feet for the one bedroom here, and on average there are about 7 PSF for the per square foot rental to about 7.5. Now for the Cliff, again you have 500 to 600 with average about 7 PSF. Notice that when it is the larger layout at 800 to 900, it actually drops below that. So we see that with the larger layout, the PSF suddenly drops. Now again with Altes, similar size at about 7 PSF plus range. Now I want you to notice for Sky Suite at Anson, it has a much smaller layout for the one bedroom at about 300 to 400 square feet. And with the smaller layout, we suddenly see a jump in the per square foot rental to about 10-11 PSF. Now using this, now bring it back to the marina area, what we could tell from the earlier examples at Tanjong Pagar is that the smaller the layout is, the higher the per square foot rental. And then when the units are bigger, the per square foot rental turns out to be a bit lower. So at the marina area, we have a few competitors, which will be the Sail over here, Marina Bay Residences, and then Marina One Residence. And then for One Marina Gardens, we are over here. So let's look at their current per square foot rental. Now for the Sail, we can see that for a larger layout at about 600 or 500 to 700 square feet, it goes at about 7 to about 8 PSF. Now for Marina Bay Residence, we can see it's about 8 to 9 PSF with generally a larger layout. And again with Marina One Residence, 700 to 800 square feet layouts with 7 to about, I would say 6 PSF even for their rental. So what does this mean for One Marina Gardens, where our size is about 420 to 452 square feet? Now if we take the example of Tanjong Pagar, this means that our rental likely will be about 10 to about 12 per square foot. So if we take that to the rental yield, so assuming you get 431 square foot layout, and then you purchase at, let's say the starting is 1.16, so let's take a middle range of about 1.3 million. Now assuming you rent at about 10 per square foot, 11 per square foot, this is the rental range you will get, which means that your rental yield is about 4 to 4.4%. Now knowing this number is important because that tells you what is your benchmark in rental yield to the other 3 developments we just discussed. Now for the Sail with the rental that we went through just now, on average their one bedroom rental yield is 4.4%. And then for Marina Bay Residence is higher at 4.6%. And then for Marina One Residence, it is 3.9%. So on average, we can see that a good acceptable rate in the marina area is 4% and above. And it's important for us to understand how this rental yield actually affects the profitability. So let's look at the profitability of these 3 developments. You can see that for the Sail, which is the line in blue, it has gone up about 14% over the years over here. And then for Marina Bay, about 5%. Now this is likely because the quantum is significantly higher for Marina Bay versus versus the sale. And then for Marina One residents, we actually see a decline over the year. So what does this tell us? If your rental yield is below 4%, where all your other neighbors is above that, for an area where investors are really looking at numbers here, this tends to make your development not look as attractive. So in order to have a safe exit here and be competitive in the Marina area, we want to make sure that for One Marina Gardens, we can actually buy into something that even if later on we sell at a higher price, it is still 4% and above in terms of rental yield. So if we bring that to One Marina Gardens, in order for us to purchase at a price where we can still sell higher later, we need to at least achieve 4.2% to still have that 4% if we sell at resale. So these are the prices that I would suggest, assuming you rent at 10 to 12 per square feet. So if you're renting at about 12 per square feet, I wouldn't go anything above 1.45 million in order to still have that safe rental yield where you can exit later on. And then for the larger one, 431 square feet layout, it will be about 1.47 that I would cut off at. So wrapping up the one bedroom, really look at the numbers. If you're thinking about going for this development, your rental yield, your entry price are really going to be the prime priority factors over here. Moving on to the 2 bedrooms. Now for this, we're going to have 3 categories, which is the 2 bed 2 bath, 2 bed plus study, and then 2 bed plus house shelter. So for 2 bed 2 bath, you're going to have quite a few different variations. Now some come with an open kitchen like this, and then others will have a tucked in kitchen for the dumbbell style layout where you have the bedrooms on both sides. And then you also have a more conventional layouts where you have both bedrooms tucked at the side that comes with an open kitchen over here. Now for these two, it's just a mirror of the previous view we saw. And then next we have 2 bedroom plus study, where similar to the dumbbell layouts, but you have an extra study area now, which is either tucked in the middle or at the corner over here. And then lastly, we have the 2 bed plus house shelter. Now there are quite a few layout variations for this, but all are very similar. Mainly, it is just where the house shelter is placed. Now for all the 2 bed plus house shelter, you also have the tucked in kitchen, and it will be a dumbbell style over here. So you can see again, just a different placement of the house shelter. The rest is all pretty similar. Of course, for this layout, it's going to be a bit bigger, with most of them being above 700 square feet. So the real question here, because for most other developments out of the CBD, we always want to consider the layout, how comfortable it is to stay, because for 2 bedrooms, there is a mixed element of rental as well as own stay. However, in the CBD, the real question is, with more investor buyers, does layout and size still matter? Let's look at a similar example in the Tanjong Pagar area. So here I have Icon, which we looked at earlier. Now for their 2 bedroom, they have a 936 square feet. And then for Sky Suite at Anson, it is smaller at 667 square feet. Now size aside, even though Icon is bigger, it is clearly a more comfortable layout for own stay. You also have a house shelter, a kitchen that can be enclosed if you want, of course a very wide living room that is comfortable. Now your bathrooms also come ventilated, which these are all traditional hallmarks that we want to look at for a very comfortable own stay 2 bedroom when we're looking anywhere else. Now for Sky Suite at Anson, smaller layout. Now 1 room, you can only fit a single size bed. You have an open pantry kitchen over here, no enclosable one. And then for your bathroom, not all are ventilated. And of course, living room will be smaller. So looking at this too, clearly Icon is more comfortable to stay, but does that mean it's going to give you a better rental? So let's look at their rental. Now for Icon, on average, we're looking at about 6 to 7 PSF. But for Sky Suite at Anson, because like the trend we saw earlier with the 1 bedroom, having a smaller layout, their per square foot rental is about 7 to 8 PSF on average, and has even hit 10. Now because of that, taking into consideration the rental quantum and per square foot, this actually brings Sky Suite at Anson's rental yield higher than Icon at 4.3% versus 3.8%. So in this case, we can see that for the CBD area, smaller layout actually serves you better. And the layout, how comfortable it is for own stay, doesn't really play a huge role. Now bringing it back to the Marina area, now here we have the sale, which is 883 square feet versus Marina One residence, which their 2 bedroom is 1066 square feet. So just looking at these two layouts. Now, of course, both are irregular shape with the tapered ledge in front, but just from the bedroom alone, we can see that Marina One is actually much more comfortable. Despite the taper window area, you have a more regular shape for the inside of the room, which makes it more functional and feel more spacious, versus the sail where it's tapered and can actually make it feel very small. Now, clearly for Marina One, it is bigger layout, more comfortable, but again, is this going to positively affect the rental, or is it not going to have much of an impact? So for the sail, 800 to 900 square feet, we're looking on average 7 PSF and above. And then for Marina One residents, we actually see it dropping even below 7 PSF to about 6 plus PSF on average. Now that brings the rental yield for Marina One residents with the average quantum there at 2.5 to about 3.5% for the 2 bedrooms versus the sail, which gives us about 4%. So between the two, again, we see that bigger and better layout doesn't necessarily mean better rental, which is the key thing we want to look for here. So for that tells us that in our One Marina Gardens, what we want to look for is to go for the smallest possible layout in order to get the best rental yield. So because of that, I would actually shortlist the smallest layout for 2 bedroom, which is 646 square feet. And that being said, if we rent for 9 to 11 per square foot over here, in order to achieve at least 4% rental yield, this is actually the prices that I would cut off at. Next, we have the 3 bedrooms. Let's start with the standard layout first. So the largest for the 3 bedroom standard is going to be 1,012 square feet. So what you're going to get for this is a good sized 3 bedroom, as well as a house shelter, and I would say a very decent sized kitchen over here, as well as a wash closet. So definitely a very functional 3 bedroom. Now moving on to the smaller size layouts for the 3 bedroom, they're going to be 980 square feet, and the smallest would be 904 square feet. So the differences between this and the larger one we saw before is that you're not going to have a wash closet for this, and your kitchen is going to be smaller as well. Now in addition, for this one, you actually have your house shelter tucked near the foyer instead of next to the kitchen. But overall, I'll still say a very functional 3 bedroom. Now for 3 bedroom premium, you're going to have the 2 larger layouts first, which is 1,238 square feet and 1,173 square feet. Now the difference between this and the smaller ones we saw earlier is you'll have that wide landscape living room, which really makes it feel more open, more spacious, and gives you that panoramic view, especially if you're facing Gardens by the Bay or the sea view. Now in addition, you're also going to get a yard over here in the kitchen. Now there's one more for 3 bedroom premium, which is the smaller one at 1,066 square feet, and the difference for this is you're going to have a portrait living room instead of the landscape one that we just saw over there. Now lastly, we have the 3 bedroom dual key, which is a combination of a 2 bedroom on one side over here and then a 1 bedroom on this side. And for this stack, it's actually going to be facing over here, and your kitchen will be an open concept on both sides over here. My top choice for a 3 bedroom is going to be the 3 bedroom dual key, because this layout will be able to give us the best rental yield out of all the 3 bedrooms. Now this is a split of a 2 and 1 bedroom, so if we assume based off the 10 PSF and the 9 PSF that we estimated earlier, this will actually give us a total rental of 9,121 for the entire unit, assuming that we buy it at 2.8 million roughly, and this is going to give us a 3.9% rental yield. But I definitely hear the hesitance from all of y'all watching, because dual key tends to have a bad rep when it comes to condo. Yet if we think about resale EC, they actually have quite the opposite reputation and tend to profit and do really well in the resale market. So why is it that a dual key in a resale EC versus condo is so differently received? So let's look at the difference. Now imagine you're somebody looking to buy a 3 bedroom today and your budget is 1.7 to 1.9 million. So assuming we're looking at D19 here we have La Fiesta as well as the Topiary. Now with that 1.7 to 1.9 million, you could go for La Fiesta with a 3 bedroom or a 4 bedroom that is standard and you can comfortably stay. But taking that same budget, if you went to a dual key at Topiary, you can comfortably stay in a 3 bedroom while having that 1 bedroom being rented out and cover part of your mortgage. Now imagine if you want to take this same 4 bedroom dual key and buy it in a condo, going back to La Fiesta for a 4 bedroom dual key, the quantum there is 2.3 million, which means you will have to top up extra 500k in order to enjoy that same benefit of renting one unit out. This is why resale easy dual key tends to do so well because of the quantum. They can comfortably buy in at the quantum they had intended for own stay that they could get same at a condo, but still have an extra unit on top of that to rent out. Versus if they went for a full-on dual key in a condo, which usually means they have to pay quite a bit more in terms of the quantum, which is why dual key tends to do so well for resale EC because of its accessibility, and yet for condo we see it's a very different case. Of course, for 3-bedroom dual key, there's only one stack, so assuming you couldn't get a unit, should you go for the smaller or bigger layout of 3-bedroom as your second option? So let's look at the sale where we have a smaller layout of 1,300 to 1,400 and then a bigger layout at 1,800 to 1,900. Again, what we want to consider here is the rental, and per square foot rental, if you notice, it is so similar that it's not much difference even if you get a bigger layout. So in this case, I would say it makes more sense to go for a smaller 3-bedroom, which is why my second choice would be the smallest 3-bedroom available at 904 square feet. So assuming you enter at about 2.55 million, and assume your rental price is maybe 8.3 per square foot, based on the size difference from those that are already in the resale in the area, this will give you about 8,000 per month at 3.77% for your rental yield. Now lastly, before we move on to the 4 bedrooms, I really want to talk about how you should map your prices on booking day, especially if you're considering between a few unit types. So let's say you're going for a 3-bedroom. Now for developers, there's only 3 ways they can price a premium, which is number 1, they go by per level, so for floor jump, or they go by the view in terms of the premium they place, or for some developers, they'll actually have the strategy where on the lower floor or a certain floor, they'll place a huge premium, and then the following floors all jump at a much lower premium. So certain floors, they will place a premium on. Now for Kingsford, what we've seen in their previous launches like Chuan Park or even Normanton Park is that they have 2 habits. Now the first one is either they place a large premium on the lower floor like 2nd or 3rd floor. I believe at Chuan Park there was a certain floor they actually placed 100k on. So for usually the 3rd floor, maybe they'll put a premium, and then after following this, they will actually have each floor at less than what the market average is at about 2.5% to 3% per floor jump. And then their second strategy, when we see places like Normanton where you have the park and sea view versus the city view, they will actually place quite a large premium on the view that is facing the seaside. So for the view is their habit. So coming here, I mean, we won't know how they are going to price for this, but based on this strategy, there are 3 things you need to do when it comes to booking day. So the first thing is get the price from the 2nd, 3rd and 4th floor to see if for the 3rd floor they suddenly jump in terms of the premium. Now the second thing you want to do is get 2 units that are different facing. So maybe one is facing inwards and then one is towards Gardens by the Bay to find out what the premium is in the view. So you get 2 units with different view. But one thing I want you to note here is that for One Marina Gardens, because each stack is a certain size, you don't have 2 same size that are facing 2 facings. What you want to look at instead of the quantum is the PSF jump for view premium. And if let's say for the view, it is less than 5%, I would say it's actually worth going for the better view. But if it's anything above that, I would actually go for the less premium view. So use 5% as your benchmark. And then lastly, I would take one on the lower floor after I finalize the stack I'm looking at, mid floor as well as high floor, to know how the premium is like for each floor range, or whether they still kept it minimum like what we've seen in many of their other developments. This will help you know if you enter a safe price and how you are compared to your neighbors, which is also crucial for your exit. Lastly, we have the 4 bedrooms with just one layout at 1,647 square feet. Now, of course, you have the best seat in the house towards Gardens by the Bay over here. Now, layout-wise, if I talk about own stay, it's going to be very comfortable. You have a huge living dining area over here that allows you to directly look out to your view. Dry and wet kitchen, comfortable master that you can also look at the view. Now, again, of course, for 4 bedrooms, this is more geared towards own stay, and very few people buy in the CBD for rental, which is why if we look at all the 4 bedrooms across the CBD area, very few are profitable or the margins are very small. So if you are buying this because you love the area, do have a long horizon in mind. So this is definitely not one to buy to sell within a short 3 to 4 years. If you're looking for that, there are other areas outside the CBD that are better options. If you're buying this, it is really for your love of the area. In terms of comparison to our neighbors, I will say that we have a bit of advantage in the sense that if we look at Marina One, the Sail, Marina Bay residents, most of them, the layout is much bigger, which brings most of their quantum up, except for the Sail that will be a bit more comparable. For the other two, we'll cross the 5 million mark range. So for here, it is starting at about 4.45 million for the 4-bedder, which means that we might be able to get something below that as well for those that want to access into this area. But all in all, do be very mindful of your entry price for this and do plan for a long horizon if you're going for a 4-bedroom over here. Now that's all for our review today. Now One Marina Gardens, I think it's a pretty exciting breath of fresh air to the CBD area. Just be very mindful of the rental and numbers if you're thinking about going into this. I've listed the preview dates above, so if you want to book a slot to have a look at the show flat, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at the listed number, and I'll catch y'all next time.